I remember 1.0. Katella's story really began in Final Fantasy XI. Kicking and screaming, I was dragged by my husband and his friend into playing a video game, and an online one at that. They were seriously challenging all my conditions of sensibility. Final Fantasy XI's controls were so clunky and foreign. It took me weeks to learn how to move my character properly, and everything took so long to accomplish. But somewhere along the way, I grew to love it. The ability to meet new friends from far-off places was amazing. Friendships were made, some flourished, and some fizzled, and some even remain in good standing yet today. But regardless of the outcome, the experience as a whole was a treasure, and one that I'd not soon forget. All things come to an end, though, and there came a time where I simply couldn't bring myself to invest the amount of time needed to progress in Final Fantasy XI anymore. By then, most of my friends had quit. One very special friend of ours had passed away. My husband and I, we had spent so much time with this friend in 11, even moving with him to a different server, that it was hard to imagine playing the game without him. So we didn't. I logged Katella out of Final Fantasy XI for the last time, in a very special place that he had taken us. A few years went by. I tried a few MMOs, but I really missed the feel of the Final Fantasy XI community. It was around that time that I first heard about Final Fantasy XIV. I remember diligently following every piece of information I could find on it. I signed up and anxiously played the 1.0 beta. Lots was unknown, lots was promised, and lots was expected. I remember I was a little surprised to find launch not really much different from what the initial 1.0 beta had been. I had expected things to be more than what they ended up rolling out. Things were laggy. It was odd how some things worked. And I completely gave up on trying to use the keyboard to play altogether, opting for a controller for the first time in my life. Still, all that said, I'm one of those odd ones that didn't actually hate the initial incarnation of 1.0. It was clunky and odd, but it had its charm. When I was honest, it wasn't that different than how lost I felt booting up Final Fantasy XI the first few times. Sure, it wasn't polished, it was not perfect, but it had an obvious potential. I was genuinely interested in how it would become. It's part of the reason I continued to play, even after so many left. There are 3 things I've identified that make a game worthy to me. One is the graphics. I admit I'm somewhat of a graphics snob. If I'm going to escape to a virtual world, I want that world to be pretty. Even with the 1.0 copy pasta that everybody clamored about, this particular adventurer found Final Fantasy XIV to definitely have nailed that aspect for me. It was beautiful. Some of the coolest sights were places that the average Joe never dared to tread, many of which were seated among the most dangerous of mobs. If you could make it there, you weren't disappointed. Once I figured that out, much of my time was spent in the wilds exploring. Another point for me is the overall feel of the game. I want there to be a sense of history, a sense of honor, decency, and reason. I want the story to give me the understanding that above and beyond all, there is a greater calling, a greater good to be achieved. Being recognized as a hero is not the point, which is, I guess, is why the original storytelling methods didn't bother me. Going through that story with my character, that's what mattered. I didn't need for the NPCs to recognize me, but I did need to know that there was a reason for what I was doing. While the story in the early days wasn't totally fleshed out, and it was often confusing, by the end, it had evolved, and it had evolved into something far more substantial, something I could care about, and something I really enjoyed. Even though, in the end, our hard work didn't end up going the way we would have hoped, it was still worth the sweat and tears spent to get there. For most things, the joy isn't always found in the end result, but instead in the journey there. The final and most important piece to me, and one of the things that continues to draw me to this game, is its community. While I was able to duo with my husband Blind Rage in 1.0 when our schedules allowed, my Lalafel's early days were pretty lonely. I spent a lot of time just exploring and soloing. I soloed my archer to level 42 without ever being in a regular party. I had tried to join a few link shells, but I'm a bit quiet, so I hadn't really found my niche, and often I played at times that many people in those link shells weren't on. That all changed, however, in April of 2012, when on an off chance, I just happened to join up with a link shell of the most amazing people. Most amazing people I've encountered in any game so far, some of which I sincerely can't imagine my life not knowing now. The remaining time we had left in Final Fantasy XIV was so much more rewarding. It was with them that I finished the storyline, and even tried my hand at Nail Van Darnus hard, and I loved every single minute of it. By the end, the game had improved so much. So much, in fact, that had they left it where it was at the very end, I would have continued playing, and paying. In November, the servers went down, and there was a definite void. I missed the game. I missed my friends. We stayed in contact via our LS website, though, so it wasn't too bad. Beta for A Realm Reborn gave us the welcome opportunity to meet back up in-game. We had so much fun those weekends. Even participated in some of the open community events, like the Lalafell March. That was awesome. Kudos to Denmo McStronghuge. Overall, I'm impressed with the dev team's changes. They've definitely come a long way from what they started with. It's not as clunky, not as odd to maneuver, not as laggy as it had once been, but still charming. I'm really excited for the adventures that will come to us after Dalamud's dust settles and we are officially let loose upon Orzea for keeps. My conditions? Graphics? Yes, it is beautiful. Not only in the far reaches of the world, but everywhere. The world is far more alive, breathtaking, and interesting. I can't wait to continue my exploration of Orzea, especially the areas that are unreachable in beta. I will make it to the ends of the realm, and I'm sure I'll die a few times trying, but it'll be worth it. The story? No spoilers here. I will say, though, from what I've seen, it's definitely more thought out than what we previously had, and there continues to be a higher calling that I adore. Community? This time around, I'm happy to already be a part of a thriving community, so I'm not worried there. I will offer this advice, though. If there's anything you can do to invest in your own enjoyment of the game, of any game, it's going to be finding a place. I'll encourage anyone to step outside of their comfort zone. Even if you are shy like me, simply say hello. Engage your fellow player. Take a few minutes to help somebody you don't know, and don't worry about what you'll get in return. Just break that ice. You won't be sorry.